Good morning. Today we're going to run through our P6-Scrubber. I'm Nicole Jordan. I am actually joining you today from Calgary, and I will do the lead-in. Doing the heavy lifting is Sue Familia, coming to you from Wyoming, and she's an implementation specialist with Emerald. She will show you the software in action, and we'll touch on why we built it, how we've been using it, what the clients are saying. We'll give you some feedback on a variety of things. Okay, so you'll have a chance to ask some deep questions and make sure that you're understanding how the tool could benefit your team. So what we feel with P6, it's fantastic software, of course, based on P3 from years ago, leader in the market in enterprise project management and corporate planning, and of course, major capital projects. It's used all around the world, but we do get into some common struggles. And one of the struggles is when you're working in a project, program, or project where you're importing from other parties. It could be from engineering companies, it could be from contractors, and you're doing major importing. So we get the problem where P6 starts to get polluted data that you didn't want, etc. Okay, so one of the first things I want to ask out of the gate is, how do you deal with projects from outside your company? So do you bring them in to, what we find is sort of three different approaches. There's many, but these are the three most common. So if you want to answer, we can share the results. Do you bring in a project and scrub it in a separate database? Okay, so having a separate database is a common way that people do this. Now, there's a cost to having that. Or they take the XER, so the file they receive, it is a text file, and they start modifying it. Now, we've seen some pretty bad damage done to a whole database with that approach. So that can be very dangerous. And if you're doing that, you can violate your support with Oracle. Okay, so those are dangerous tactics, but people have used them, and someone just answered that they've done it. Or import into your database and then clean up the project. That's another method. Okay, but it's time consuming, it's problematic. So I'll share the results for those who answered. We got one answer in, but you can certainly answer and we'll share the results. And we share those results on our website. So if you've attended other webinars that we've done, we do gather up the data over the last year and we've put out the results. So that's something that you can look at on our website for each different tool. It's pretty interesting, some of the answers. So of course, we don't want this pollution that goes on, okay? And worse than just pollution is you could have what I would call a clobbering of data, okay? So you could actually have overwriting of data, which is exactly what you don't want. So there are lots of things to consider when you're working in an environment where you're doing importing. Now, the other thing that we have is we have clients who have specific requirements for the contractors and their P6 schedules. There are specific requirements. So you might have a detailed specification of things they have to do, certain codes, certain calendars, certain rules. So we've got P6-Scrubber that helps you highlight those requirements. And also we have another tool called P6QA that helps you do a deep dive on all the criteria and the quality of a schedule. Okay, so we have two tools that really help with that. And you can explore that one if you're wanting to automate that kind of critiquing a little bit more. So the other thing is we have some clients who spend a lot of time doing imports. So I'm going to ask one more quick question. How many hours do you think you spend each month doing cleanup? Now, this is going to vary considerably. We have clients that import over a few dozen projects every single month. So if you're spending many hours, I'd say even above 2, you're going to see P6-Scrubber is going to save you a heck of a lot of time. Okay, so again, I'll just share the results for those who felt they wanted to answer, and we'll keep going. Okay, now the key thing is we built this tool because we were helping multiple clients keep their database clean and helping them with scrubbing routines and methodologies. And we said, there's got to be a better way. So we decided to take some of the routines that our programmers had put together and build it into a software tool. And we've got clients using it in different parts of the world now. The tool's only really been out as a tool for probably a year and a half. And we've implemented a lot of great features. So Sue's going to show you how those work. So I'll give you just a quick overview. So we have a file, an XER file. It can be one project. It can be many projects. It could be an XML file. It could also be a Microsoft project file. So we deal with all 3 types of files, okay? When you have that file, you create a scrubbing definition. So you essentially create the criteria of what you want to allow to come in to P6, what you want to clean up a little bit, okay, remapping, maybe prefixing, and or completely don't bring it in, so scrubbing. Okay, so you have those 3 different options, and Sue will show you those in detail. Now, we also clean up some of the things that you might have experienced if you've been doing a lot of importing. The POBS and the RIS types have been kind of straggler data, causing very, very huge files. We deal with those as well. And good thing to note is in the later versions, Oracle has a better handle on those. So that's starting to become a thing of the past. Now, we also deal with calendars. Now, calendars are a big thing. You do not want calendars colliding. That would change your scheduling, and that would be a big problem. Okay, so we deal with calendars. And of course, the big ticket items, user-defined fields at all levels. So project, WBS, activities, steps, resources, resource assignments, so at all the levels, codes as well, again, at all the levels, and cost code items as well. Now, we also have some validations so that you can see whether or not certain criteria like project naming, activity naming, whether they're meeting the convention, yes or no. Okay, so that can create a warning so that you know there's a problem there. Okay, so those are the bits and pieces that we're able to work on, pretty much all the different facets. And again, why we built this was because the out of the box importing didn't give the level of granularity that we needed. So that's really the key, why we went into this tool and why we've got clients now using it in many parts of the world. Okay, so I've given you a brief overview. Let's go ahead and turn it over to Sue, and she will go ahead and show us in detail how the software works. So I'm transferring it over, and then she should be able to show us the software tool.
Thank you, Nicole. Good morning,
Okay.
everyone. I'm going to share my screen so we can just take a look at the P6-Scrubber Live. So first of all, I want to show you what importing without kind of cleaning up your database or your XER XML prior to import can do to your database. So first of all, on the resources, when you import resources from an XER or XML, what can happen is that when they come in flat. So meaning that you can see that I've got some hierarchy in some of my resources here. When you import resources from a file, they will come in as just individual resources. They're not going to be in a hierarchy of any sort or anything like that. So you can see I've got several resources that are here that are probably for different XERs. So one of the things we can do is land those resources in a predefined hierarchy or parent when they come in. So you don't get these this number of just flat kind of straggler uh, resources that are imported in. Roles work the same way, and so you'll get just a bunch of ones that are just kind of hanging down there, dangling, and you're not quite sure what they go to. Now, another thing is activity codes. So if I go into my activity codes here, I can see that I've got, let me just stretch this out a bit. I've got several different types of activity codes at the global level that have come in, and it looks like I've got this OSTA that came in, and although it's prefixed, um, it's still I don't need those. Those are not ones that are important to my database at all. And I've got all these. I mean, I've got a whole huge number of uh, activity codes that have been brought in that aren't necessarily ones that are important to my projects. So we're able to push these down to a project level so that you don't get this. Another one is your calendars. And with calendars, if they're imported at the global level, these are ones that you want to keep just for your organization. These are ones that your organization is going to be uh, using. So when they come in, and you can see I have a whole mess of calendars that have been imported at the global level that are just kind of messy in here. I've got some that are probably duplicates of others, but I don't know that for sure. So I could there's something that I might that you don't necessarily want, essentially. Now, if I go down, we all pretty much have this standard 5-day work week. And where is it? Standard 5-day work week. This comes delivered with P6 when it's installed. Now, just because you have one that says standard 5-day work week, that doesn't mean that your definition of your standard 5-day work week is the same as someone else's definition of standard 5-day work week. So when you import, if you have a calendar named the same as what you have in your database, that calendar that you're importing is actually going to overwrite the definition or the setup of that calendar that is already in your database. So it could overwrite that. And then when you schedule using that calendar, it may be something that's going to mess up your scheduling. It's going to make that the schedule according to what they had defined rather than what you had defined. So this is an important thing to note when you are importing. So we can handle those items there. Now, another thing I want to visit just really quickly is when you're importing. So I'm going to look at XCRs, and when you're importing, you have different ways that you can import, and you do have some options as to what you want to do with the data that's coming in with that import. However, especially on the XCR level, you have a very limited amount of what you can handle. You can't handle, you can see activity codes here. So you can't say, I want to push these activity codes down to a project level. They may be important to that project, but you don't necessarily need them coming into your global activity codes. And the same, there's no user-defined fields here as well. So there's that issue of user-defined fields also becoming polluted, as well as there's no calendars in here either. So you are limited in what you can handle when you are importing. So I'm just going to log out of this database and get into the database that I'm going to use to show you uh, how the tool imports. And while we wait for that, there we go. Um, I'll go in and I'll show you the tool. I'll make sure I get in the right place. Okay. So with P6-Scrubber, we have the ability to deploy it in two different ways. We have a standalone version, which is not connected to a database. However, and this is how we developed it. However, we did find that there was a need and kind of a helpful thing to be able to connect it to your database so that you can see the data that is actually in your database while you're scrubbing or while you're creating a definition. So we're able to point this at however many databases you have, and it's going to help guide you and see what you have in your database before as you're defining what you want to do with a particular file. So I'm in Scrubber now, and I can see, I've got several areas that I can handle data in. We have them kind of grouped by topic. So if I go in and let's say I'm looking at, my activity codes, and I want to build out a definition, what I call from scratch, meaning with no assistance from um, a file or your database to begin with. First of all, on all of our uh, modules, you'll need to enable it because maybe you don't want to handle some of that data in there. So you'll enable the modules that you want to actually work with. Now, if I'm building this out from scratch, I can add and I can go in and type what I'm expecting to come in as a code type name in this case. I can define what scope it is. And you can see as I hover over it, this is the live database and it's giving me some warnings, or the live version, excuse me. And so it's telling me I need to select an action. Now, if it were a project uh, level activity code, I could give it a project ID. Then I need to say, what do I want to do with this code if it's encountered in the XER or XML? I can choose to scrub it, which is remove it, or I can choose to keep it. And in this case, I do want to keep it. Now, as I move along, it's now going to tell me, I need a code type name that I want it to match to. Now, because I'm in the live database, I can actually look up this code type name. So if I start typing, I can see that I've got a vendor there. Now, because this is a global code, I could choose whether I wanted to roll it down to the project level at this point. So if I wanted to do that, I could check mark my little roll down box, and it's going to roll it down to the project level. It's also going to give me in the live version whether it is actually matching something I already have in P6, which is kind of nice because then I can see, okay, yes, I do have an activity code there called vendor, but is that the same activity code? Do I want to remap it to something, etc.? Now, of course, with codes, we have dictionaries. And so I can just pop open the little plus sign, and the dictionary values are under each one of those. So when I'm defining a dictionary, if I am uh, doing this from scratch, of course, I'm going to need the values that I want for this particular code. So what I can do is I can actually go into P6 and I can go to my activity codes and I can copy those values and I can put them right into my P6-Scrubber definitions. So I'm just going to copy these, and I'm going to go back to my scrubber. And then I have this bulk edit that's going to allow me to open this up, and then I can paste my values in there. Now, because this came from uh, P6, I have an extra column here that I don't need. I don't need that color column. So I can actually remove that column. And I also have a header that comes in. So I'm going to tell it to remove that top header. Now, if you had this in an Excel file or something like that, you could do the same thing. You could copy it and then paste it in, but maybe you wouldn't have a header column. So you wouldn't have to check mark that. So I can apply this, and it's going to bring in all of those values. Again, I'm going to have to, select an action. What do I want to do with each one of those? And then I can actually map them to where I want them to go. And so my description is even going to come in. So I'm going to have that ability to set these all up in that respect if I have a live database. If I don't, I'm going to just put those in there and give it an action and have it go ahead and add those in on my definition. So now there are two things that we can do in addition. I can choose to scrub any extra code types that come in. So if it's not defined down in my table here, P6-Scrubber is going to come, and when it looks at that and encounters one that's not on my definition, it's going to essentially, if this is check marked, it's going to remove that extra code type. And we have this in different shapes and forms in each one of our modules, where you can remove those extra items. The same goes with the dictionary. So perhaps you do want to allow extra codes or extra values to come into your dictionary. You can leave this blank. If it's not defined here, it's just going to go ahead and let it come in. If I didn't want extra values, I could check mark this, and it's going to just keep this value list. Now, this would kind of be, as if I were doing this from scratch. Now, an easier way to do this, and first of all, I'm just going to clear out what I've already done here. I can use a file that I'm actually going to import so I can see what's in that file. So I can go in and I can browse to where I need it, to where my file is. And I can choose the file. And then I can import that file into P6-Scrubber. So this is going to show me what is actually in my file. So I'm just going to go up and start at the top, and we're kind of going to go through each one of these. So I have my code type dictionary validation. And you can see, because I'm in the live version, it's kind of giving me some coaching. First of all, I have some that match. My district does match my code values. However, when I hover over this, I can see that I have some dictionary values that don't match what I have defined or what's in my database. So I can open this up, and I can see that I have this DIST5 coming in, and I don't have a matching value in my database. And it's showing me here, it doesn't match. So if I wanted to see my values, I can simply delete this out, and it's going to give you what your database values are. So I can see that I have a D5 here. And when I select my D5, I can now see that that is a matching value. So I can remap this dictionary value, DIST5 or DIST5, to my D5 value, and then I'm not adding additional codes or dictionary values to my code. Now, if I go into my user-defined fields, it's going to essentially do the same thing. It's telling me I don't have a submittal date. I don't have that name of a UDF. However, you can see I have a little bit different icon in my matches P6, instead of a red X, it's telling me I have something that's similar in my database. So if I want to go in and take a look at that, it's actually going to show me it doesn't have submittal date, but it does have this SCR submittal date. So maybe I want to I want to remap it to what I have. This is the same thing. It's just that I have it prefixed. If it's not anything, if that's not where I want it to go, I can simply, clear this out. I can start, typing where I think it needs to go or where I assume it needs to go, and then I could select where where I want to remap it to. So we've tried to make it really easy for you to match up that data in your database to what you're getting in your XER or your XML. Now, this is a little bit different on the where you're scrubbing for those additional user-defined fields that you don't have in this. We do it by subject area. So if I didn't want any WBS type codes coming in, I could choose to scrub anything additional. And I see that I do have a WBS code here. I could just choose to scrub that out in this case. And then no WBS codes are going to come in. At the project level, maybe I do want some of these to come in if they don't match my database. So I can leave that blank and those will be allowed to come in. Now with activity codes, that it works the same way. Um, Same with user-defined fields. Now with remapping on resources, this is where I can choose to either remap my resources or create new, depending on what I want to do there. And I could go in and see what I've got. So I've got some hints here that I can remap these to. And I can also up here at the top where I have this resources, I can open this up and I can go down and I can choose where I want to land these resources when they're imported. So let's say I want to land them underneath my Scrubber parent. It's going to take the resources in this file that I'm allowing to come in. Let me just close this down really quick. And it's going to actually import them into that parent that I've selected. So that really helps to keep that resource area nice and tidy. You know that these are the resources that belong to this particular parent and it was imported. Codes and user-defined fields work the same for resources. And then I've got my unit of measure. So units of measure, a lot of times we have them predefined, of course, but they don't necessarily match what a a client or the XCR has as defined as our units of measure. So I have the ability to actually remap this unit of measure, and I can see that I have a capital M instead. And once I do that, then I can go in and I can also name it the same. So even though this is square meters in their XCR, I have or cubic meters. I'm sorry. I have something else defined as cubic meters. So now I can keep my units of measure kind of nice and tidy as well, with still denoting what unit of measure it is accurately on my in my file. Now my next topic is calendars. So calendars, as I said, can collide, and Nicole also mentioned this. They can collide. They could, if I have that standard 5-day work week, it could overwrite what I already have defined as my standard 5-day work week calendar. So you may want to roll those calendars down as they're being imported. So I'm just going to go ahead and roll all of these down. Now, that I have these all defined to roll down, what if I have an additional global calendar that comes in on my file when I'm importing it? I can choose to roll down those extra global calendars as well. So anything new, any new calendar that comes in at the global level, I can do that. Now at the project level, this was a request from one of our clients who uses the tool, and they wanted to be able to see what uh, project calendars were coming in with this XER. And the reason for this is they wanted to see if they matched up to the specifications of what they had set out there for their contractor to have for their resource calendars. So we can. This is just for information only, but they did request that we put this in. Now we can also handle resource calendars. So I can see that I don't have one of the one a standard 5-day resource only. Um, but what I could do is I can see I have something similar, and so I could remap it and I could rename it this SCR standard 5-day resource only. I know that these are the same calendars, but I just want to make sure that I know that this is going to be coming into that resource calendar. So we can also handle those resource calendars. Now, roles work the same way as my as the resources. So I can remap them here. I could also land them under a predefined uh, role parent. So those will come in nice and clean, where I'm not going to get a bunch of stragglers in my dictionary for my roles. Now, with cost accounts, we can also handle cost accounts. So, with our cost accounts, you could remap them as well. You can scrub them out. If you don't use those cost accounts that are coming in, why import them? So, maybe you want to scrub those all out. And in this case, I can see that all of these match in my P6 database. So I can go ahead and just leave these alone. And I can scrub out those extra accounts that are not there in my database. Now, another problem that tends to occur when importing is that you have your responsible manager that comes in with your P6 or with this file. Now, it may not necessarily be a responsible manager that you need in your database. Now, it'll add it. It'll add that responsible manager in or OBS element, and but if it's not something that's important in your database, you probably don't need to import it. So you can actually select which responsible manager to change this to. So when you import this, it's already going to be assigned the responsible manager that you would like it to be assigned to when you import it. So you don't have to change that after import. And it's also not going to pollute up your OBS structure. Now, sometimes we have this final area here. Sometimes you don't need to do all this very detailed work in here. Maybe you just want to do a quick clean of your uh, file. We've allowed kind of what we call the simple scrub. So this is something that you can do to quickly kind of prefix anything, any data that's coming in. You can put a common separator in here, and then you could prefix your each element as you would want to. You can also choose whether or not you want to import that. So if I don't want to import, let's say, any curves or any shifts, I could do that. The rest I could allow to import, but maybe I want to prefix them all. So I would put a prefix in all of them. I also have the availability on this module to roll down my activity calendars or my global calendars or excuse me, global activity codes, I could roll those down, all of them, and I could choose to roll down all of my global calendars. And I can use this in conjunction with the other rules that I have this uh, for this definition. So I've completed this definition. It's doing it. I have everything defined, and I want to be able to use it and use it again on subsequent XERs that are XMLs that I'm going to be scrubbing. So I can save this definition. So I can open that save and load definitions. I can save as, and I can, name it what the definition. So I'm just going to put example here. I could put some notes about that definition. And then I have 3 levels at which I can save this. I can save it just for me at the personal level. I could save it to a team. So if I have a team that's working on a specific project, or maybe they always work with a particular client that you're importing from, I could assign it to that team, and that team is going to have availability to this definition. Or I can choose to make it a global definition. So I'm just going to leave it at the personal level, and then I can apply it, and it's going to save. Now, if I had anything that wasn't defined um, in my definition, it's going to alert me to that fact and tell me, hey, you haven't handled, let's say, for example, your activity user defined fields. You have it enabled, but there's some stuff that needs to be cleaned up there. It will alert me of that fact. So now you have a definition. And let's say you're coming in and you want to use that definition to scrub a file. I could use this one, for example, or I could choose a new definition. I could load it, and then I'm able to scrub my file. So then I'm able to go in and use my scrub files option, and it's going to use that definition. And I can go in and I can choose the files I want to file or files that I want to scrub. So in my case, I'm gonna choose these two. I want to use the same definition to scrub these two XERs. So then I can select open, and I can process those two files. That's going to do them separately. Um, and when I'm finished, I have the ability to view the viewer report. So this is probably a good idea to do to just make sure that the P6-Scrubber handled the data in the way that you were thinking that you set up that definition. So I've got my kind of basic overview up at the top here. So it's going to tell me how it handled each one of those pieces of data that I had defined. Some of them I don't have defined. And it's going to let me know whether there there was any type of change on each one of those. So I can see in my resource dictionary and my cost accounts, I had no changes. However, let's say in my project code um, area, I can see that I had 3 that it kept. It didn't remove any, but I had a change to 1. Now I can dive in a little bit deeper with each one of my uh, items here, each one of my modules, and I can see what happened in detail. So in my project code type validation or scrubbing, I can see in the gray boxes or tables, this is what I set up. This is how I defined my definition. As I scroll down, the boxes with color in them are what happened during this scrub. So I can see on my client type and my type of schedule, I had no changes. Nothing, nothing occurred there. However, on my district, I did have a dictionary change. So you can see down here below, I have my district dictionary. So I can go down and I can see that there's that dist 5 that I had, and it was remapped to that D5. And I can do that for each one of my validations. So if I go down and look at my user-defined fields, I can see that I scrubbed my WBS, and I also, instead of submittal date, I remapped it to submitted date. So it's going to give me an accounting of everything it did when it scrubbed. Now, if this looks good, I can go in and I can actually download my results. If not, then I can go back, change my definition, and handle it the way that I need to. So when I download those the results, I'm going to get two files here. The first one is, of course, my clean uh, XER in this case. And it's going to be appended with the date and time, so I know that it was scrubbed and when. And then I'm also going to get an HTML copy of the report that we just looked at. So if you wanted to give feedback to the person who gave you that XCR, you could copy and paste pieces of it. You could share the whole report, however you want to handle that. This is really great for that feedback to those contractors. Now, I've already imported a file that's been scrubbed into my database just so that we didn't have to go through those steps. So I've got this post XCR, uh, this post scrubbing XCR file, and I'm just going to come back here. Sorry, and I can see that I've got some uh, indicators that are telling me what happened because this was a scrubbed file. I can see that I had some changes on both my project code types as well as the dictionaries, and that's that District 5 that we saw was remapped. I also have my user-defined fields. We had some changes on there, and I can put. This is kind of like a dashboard, so I can put those indicators up there, see what all has changed. Now, in addition to that, I also have a report that was brought in, the same report that we looked at, and now it is a notebook. So I can keep the kind of the running history of what happened to this XER or this file prior to import. This might be helpful in the claims area. Um, it gives you that accounting of what was done to this file so that you can show that no data was actually changed except for names or rolling down or things of that nature. Now if I go to my activities, I also have the same type of accounting here. So I can see that my vendors, those look really good, they're all clean. However, in the case of my work type, I had some items or some values that were probably deleted in this case, and it's alerting me to the fact that these don't have values, and so it's giving me this caution that there are no values there. Now, in my discipline, I did have some values that actually were scrubbed out and uh, were changed. So it's giving me a red X indicating that those were scrubbed out. But it's also alerting me to the fact that I don't have these other ones that are defined. So it's going to give you some coaching. It's going to give you some good feedback on what happened with that indicator, with that particular in this case code activity code value. I can also take a look at my cost accounts and things like that. So it's gonna show me by activity what happened with that activity. Okay, so I talked about these indicators and this notebook. Now, if you don't want to have those come in with your file, you do have the option within Scrubber to handle those. So that's in this general topic here, that general module. If I don't want, maybe I want the notebook in there, but I don't want all those indicators. I just want to rely on my notebook for my changes. I can choose to turn off the indicators, and then in this case, it's going to just create the notebook in this case. So by default, these are both on. So if you don't want them to come in, you will have to come in and change them. And I also have the ability to override the version of a file. So with Primavera P6, what if you create a file in a higher version and you share that file with someone else with a lower version of that database, it can really mess up the import. In some cases, it won't import it at all because it's a higher version. So let's say this file came from version 22, and I only have version 21 because I'm not on the cloud, and I need to make sure that it comes in on my version. Or maybe I'm sharing it. Maybe I am in the cloud and I'm sharing it with somebody. I'm sharing this XER with somebody who is on a lower version. I can choose that I want to demote the version of this XCR or this file to that lower version. So then when it is imported, we can import it successfully. Now we did talk, well, I guess Nicole talked about having a validation. And we have two validations. We have this ID at both the ID and name validation, both at the project and the activity level. So when I go into that area here, this was again something that one of our clients had requested. They had specifications that they put out to their contractors for the files that they were providing for them. And they had a specific project pattern that they were looking for. So I can define a project pattern or a project ID pattern in this case. I can do something simple like contains, starts with, ends with, or I can actually build out a pattern. So I'm going to use this simple pattern, and I'm going to build a pattern out that I'm looking for each time I get a file. So I want any letter, and I'm expecting to see two letters, and both of those letters should be uppercase. Now next, I want to see 5 numbers. So I can select that I want to see 5 numbers here. Then I'm going to want to see a dash. So this is the standard prefix, so to speak, for each one of my, well, that's not a dash, for each one of my project IDs. Now, after that, it could be followed by any type of character, any number of characters. So I can put any character, and if I put a 0 here, that's going to mean that it's unlimited, and I can apply. So this is going to check my project ID and make sure that it is adhering to that specification that I've set out. Now, because I don't have anything in here, you can see that my test pattern is 0 or is red. That's because it obviously does not match the pattern that I have defined here. So I can go in, let's say I want to test to make sure that this one is defined properly, and it's telling me it's green. So I'm able to check to make sure this definition is set out the way that I need it to be, and I can test it. So now each time I scrub a file, it's going to test to make sure that this project ID is matching up to the specification that I have defined here. So I think with that, I've visited everything that I wanted to cover. Nicole, did I miss anything?
Nope, I don't think so, Sue.
Okay. And it looks like we don't have any questions right now, but if you do have questions, go ahead and type them in before I get out of here if you need me to to show something in the tool. And if not, then I will hand it back to Nicole and she can do the wrap up.
So if they had a Microsoft project file, Sue,
Yes.
what would that look like? Does it
Yep.
really look any different for them?
It does look different. So I'm going to just clear out my definition here, and I'm going to import a Microsoft project XML. Now, with Microsoft Project, the information that comes in is very much less, of course, than what we would get with a P6 file. Um, it 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 doesn't have the information, the amount of information that it has the ability to define in a Microsoft project file.
Yeah.
So on those, we are only going to be probably seeing maybe some activity codes. I've had very few that I've imported that actually have activity codes in them, but there is that possibility that there might be some activity codes. The majority of them come in at the user defined field. So I can see I've got my Oracle ID here. I've got a text2 that's coming in, and they're always at the activity level. You're never going to have any project level information in a Microsoft project file. It's always going to be at the activity. Now,
Okay.
in
So
the
like
oh,
text two there is completely not helpful. So you
no,
could
so I
rename
might
what
want to.
that's
I could
called.
rename it. I could
Okay.
scrub it if I wanted to. I could just remove it out.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely. And so you can see also it's going to give me whether I have that match there as well.
Okay.
And then on resources, I have the same option. It's going to tell me whether I have it in, whether it's matching. I can also land it in a parent resource, just like I
Hmm.
would regularly.
Okay.
Um, and then if I wanted to, prefix or do whatever, I could do that with a Microsoft project file
Okay.
as well. So yes, we can handle those XMLs from Microsoft Project.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. The I know the usual problems with Microsoft project files also include calendars. There seems to be
Right.
sometimes a calendar mismatch. So I don't think we could fix the calendar though, right? So we might
No,
have a
no,
cleanup afterwards on it.
exactly.
Okay.
Because they are going to come in at the project level, but it is going to show us what that calendar that it's going to use is at the project level.
Okay.
So it would at least alert you to the fact that, this is the calendar that's
Okay.
coming in,
Yeah,
and
that's
maybe
good.
you want to, take a look at that and make sure it's defined properly when it comes in at the project level.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So why don't I do the wrap up?
Okay.
Thanks, Sue. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us, and hopefully you saw how easy that scrubbing can be. Much easier than dealing with files coming in and then having to clean them up and all that stuff. Cleaning up can take quite a bit of time. You have to dig through all those different features, project level, WBS, etc. So this will keep you with your definition there. It'll allow you to keep scrubbing it. And then if you bring in from the same, let's say from the same contractor, a new file, you've already got that scrubbing definition saved, and it can be shared with all the users or just a team of users. So that works well because maybe you're on holiday and someone else is going to receive that project. So they can pick up your scrubbing definition and keep going with it. So it's very easy to use. Um, and the key thing that we're getting feedback on is they're able to let a contractor know very quickly if there's a problem, right? So you can see where there might be mismatches in codes. You can get them the feedback, or you can clean it up depending on your process. So it's very easy to configure and flags the things that you need to be looking at very quickly And if there's new codes that they've added, you can see it with all those color coding available that Sue was showing you. So it's really important from a management perspective, not only running your project, but also more and more of our clients are producing dashboarding into third-party systems with the P6 data. It's becoming more common. So you have to keep your data clean. If I want to run a management report on vendors that we're using on multiple projects, the vendors need to be clean. If I want geographical reporting, the districts need to be clean. So these are important aspects, not only to running your own project, but also for the corporate management reporting that more and more clients are doing. And that has an influence on the accuracy of what you're looking at. So these are important aspects that P6-Scrubber helps not only the users, but also the management team, where the broader group. I mean, the whole point of using P6 is to make sure that we're getting everyone where we need them at the right time. So managing that communication, making sure the outputs are clean, so important. So if you haven't attended our P6 Reporter webinar, it's one that you should explore if you're looking at more and more management reporting, because our tool does a fantastic job at making that easy. So Sue did talk about some of the clients that we've got using it. We've got contractors using it, not only to scrub files that they're receiving, but also to scrub files that they're giving to their clients. Okay, so that's another aspect. So although we talked about it scrubbing an import, you could scrub an export. So let's say you have costs and perhaps resources that you don't necessarily want to share with the owner. You can scrub those out. Okay, so it doesn't limit your use of P6. So it's a bit of a different approach, but we've got that. We've got a few departments of transportation using it in the US. We've got some electrical utilities using it. So we've got a good cross-section of clients starting to use this tool. Now, this is just one of many tools that we have. We've got a lot of different software packages. The broadest P6 add-on platform, I think, in the world. So I mentioned P6 Reporter. We've got updating tools, TAPS and CAPS. TAPS being a barcode scanning tool, super, super fast updating, the fastest way to update P6 out there. We've got P6 Calculator that works fantastically. It helps with all sorts of automation. So archiving, loop detection, auto logic building. So explore some of our other tools. We've got a lot to support your group to help make your use of P6 better. It's our 28 years of experience as a full service partner. So we've had programmers on the team from the very beginning. This integration and automation was always a big part of what we've been working on. So that's why we've got such a big toolkit. So just about to close up here, but if there is some particular follow-up that you're hoping to get from Emerald, just fill in this quick poll question, and that helps us know how to stay in touch, how to follow up with you, and we can make sure that we're following up appropriately. So I still don't see any questions, so hopefully that means it was clear, you understood what Sue was explaining, and hopefully you saw some potential benefit for your group. If you do a lot of importing, you're probably quite familiar with some of the pain points we were bringing up. If you want to reach out to Sue, you can. Her email is there. You can phone our North American number. We've got our Philippines number there as well. And you can get in touch with Donna. She's our regional manager in Philippines, Donna Yu at emerald-associates.com as well. Okay, I'll stop recording.